Warlock Waluigi is back.
Hello there, fellow gamers, and welcome back to my channel. Now, today's topic has been a long time coming. If you've been a fan of Marvel ever since the days of Sony's Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, or the Fox X-Men films with Bryan Singer, or maybe even the Blade films with the directors like Guillermo del Toro, you may remember a great classic gem known as Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Why are we bringing up a game from 2006, you may ask? Well, that's because another big game from Marvel came out this year, that being Marvel's Avengers by Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics. When I look back at Marvel Ultimate Alliance and compare it to Marvel's Avengers, I tend to get kind of disappointed. It's not just that Marvel Ultimate Alliance had a massive roster with Spider-Man, the Avengers, the X-Men, Blade, Daredevil, and Ghost Rider, and all those great guys, but it's also a game that had a way bigger variety of villains. All Avengers has is AIM, MODOK, Taskmaster, and these giant robots that really aren't that fun to fight. And I get that their plan is to release more content over a big course of time, but the base product for Marvel's Avengers is just kind of repetitive, and after you beat the story, which is great by the way, I have nothing bad to say about the story, but the aftermath, the end game, isn't really all that fleshed out. And I don't know, I'm willing to wait for more content, but as of right now, I'm bored of Avengers, and that's disappointing. The big word here that we're going to focus on when comparing these two games is variety and the lack thereof for Marvel's Avengers. Marvel Ultimate Alliance has a massive variety all around in the entire game. You got multiple different realms to visit like Asgard, Mephisto's realm, Latveria, and Atlantis. Also, a massive rogues gallery such as Doctor Doom, Loki, Ultron, all the Spider-Man villains like Shocker, Lizard, Scorpion, etc., and many more. Whereas Marvel's Avengers only has 3 or so villains. You got MODOK, Abomination, Taskmaster, and some giant robots. That's not too interesting. Not to mention, Marvel Ultimate Alliance has multiple different factions, such as the Doombots and AIM as well, and as well as some Atlanteans, Asgardians, etc. But Marvel's Avengers focuses way too much on solely AIM, which gets old after a while. And I can't stress this enough. If you're going to charge $60 for a game that has a rather short but sweet story, but an end game that will go on for years to come as far as Square Enix is concerned, then you gotta have enough variety and enough content at launch to keep people interested. As of this recording, they announced Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, but with no dates and no content maps, and it's been about a month since the game released. And something they really need to address in some future updates is mission variety. There isn't much really to do when you do these missions after the story. You mostly find yourself defending points like A, B, C, like a typical multiplayer game, or defeating such and such enemies, defending some scientists or whatever that lose their health really fast and are very far from each other, which makes it very difficult to defend, and sabotaging stuff. Not to mention the boss battles themselves, which are rather uninteresting. They're just these big versions of the bosses that have a massive amount of health and don't really do much to make the battle interesting. It's pretty much just attack, attack, attack until the bullet sponge is defeated. Going back to the story of Marvel's Avengers compared to that of Ultimate Alliance, I would say Ultimate Alliance is a adventure game that is more focused with its narrative, whereas Marvel's Avengers takes its time to prepare you for the end game with all these loot boxes that are hidden in every mission, or all these objective type missions that I said, like defending stuff and sabotaging, which is odd because all I really want to be doing when I'm playing the campaign is going through a story, a cinematic experience, but then I'm just sitting there defending, sabotaging, protecting, all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, this isn't all that interesting. What was interesting were the cinematic missions, kind of like the final mission or the one with Iron Man, where you first see him introduced, as well as Thor. Those types of missions in Marvel's Avengers were fantastic. Whereas, when I think of Ultimate Alliance, I can't really think of any dull moments or any needless missions that didn't really need to be there. And, not to mention, I think it's a longer game in general, if you take your time with it, compared to that of Marvel's Avengers, which is very short. There's also this point in the story of Marvel's Avengers that I really don't appreciate. It's when it forces you to look for these resources in order to continue on in the game. Now, that's been done in games before, such as Anthem or Destiny, which I don't really want to see in my Marvel game, to be honest with you. Now, one thing I'll give credit for to Marvel's Avengers is its co-op. I love the co-op because there's really no end in sight to the amount of missions and such you can do, even though I do think they could work on them a bit. Whereas, of course, Ultimate Alliance, you go through the story and then that's pretty much it. There might be some simulator missions that you can do, but you can't really do much beyond there. That's where I would say Marvel's Avengers is perhaps the better co-op game. Now, that's mainly in theory though, because right now, I would say Marvel's Avengers is getting rather dull, and it needs more, of course, I'm going to go back to the word again, variety. We need more villains, and of course we need more heroes, but we also need better mission variety, mission types, to keep us interested. I like the Harm Room in particular because of being a massive fan of horde modes in games such as Gears of War and Call of Duty. So maybe they can expand upon that a little bit more, and instead of being locked in that Harm Room, maybe they could put it in more locations in order to make it more interesting. Of course, I've also heard they're going to add more locations in the future for bases. That's a good idea as well. But I also hope that they expand upon different locations that you can visit to fight enemies and do missions. Of course, I think this game is ripe for opportunity. There's so many different areas and locations they could add from Marvel, which you could also borrow from Ultimate Alliance games, of course, because they pretty much cover all the ground. I mean, just add Asgard in there, for example, and you got something interesting there. You got Mephisto's realm. That would be crazy. I don't know what they would do with that, but, think about, imagine if you went to Atlantis and met Namor. I mean, that'd be crazy, but I don't know if they'll go that far yet. But I just want more types of enemies. I mean, they could do enemies such as Ultron, which they might be building towards now. They could also do the Skrulls. They could do a Thanos invasion or something crazy like that. Some may say that they should say that for the sequel, but I would honestly just hope that they keep expanding upon this game. Because as of right now, I don't really want a sequel for some time until they can absolutely nail the product, I just want them to take the game that they have here and do the best they can with it. Because I want this game to be a success story. We've had success stories in the past, such as No Man's Sky or Star Wars Battlefront 2. Games that nobody thought were any good and, quite frankly, were insulting at launch. But over time, they added more content and made the game way more worth it than it was at first. So I'm just really hoping that Avengers is another one of those stories. Because let's face it, as of now, the opinion on Avengers is not very good. It's a buggy mess, for one, doesn't have variety, and gets old and repetitive very fast. But I don't want to sit here and bash the game all day. I do this out of concern, out of care. I don't hate the game. In fact, I think that the story was amazing. It introduced me to a character that I didn't care for at first, that being Kamala Khan. And quite frankly, I fell in love with the character. I absolutely can't wait to see her show on Disney Plus, and it made me care for her, you know? The idea of centering an Avengers game around Miss Marvel was very risky, but I think it paid off. And of course, I'll praise the combat system all day. It may be simple and straightforward with the same types of attack for each character, but they all feel different enough in order to make it interesting. But of course, there are concerns there, such as Captain America not running fast enough, Hulk not jumping high enough, and also Hulk getting interrupted with every single smash that he tries to do, which doesn't feel right. When you play as Hulk, you almost feel kind of weak unless you know exactly the timing that you need to do to avoid the attacks. That's the thing. The game can get very frustrating when you find yourself being interrupted with every single attack. You find yourself getting hit by rocket launchers out of nowhere, like an RKO, or you find yourself getting one little touch and, oh, your big smash is done. It's a frustrating combat system that I think could use some work. To sum up all my points here, I just want to say I love Ultimate Alliance, but for years I've wanted to see it kind of get rebooted or reimagined with a more refined experience, 3D combat, and, a much bigger co-op system. If anything, I kind of wanted Marvel's Avengers to be just that, a reimagined Ultimate Alliance. But all we really got was Marvel's Destiny Avengers 2.0, which, I don't know, it's not the worst idea. I like the fact that they want to do a games as a service thing. Now, games as a service is controversial, but if done right, it can be a fun experience that lasts for years. The problem is that the loot and the gear system in this game are very flawed, with the fact that you can't even get loot that you see visually on your character. That's just kind of boring. It's just stat boosts. You might as well just do more upgrades if you're going to do that, which Ultimate Alliance does much better in spades. You got not only the upgrades for moves, you also got the stat boosts, which is basically exactly what gear is in Marvel's Avengers. So, really what I want is a brand new Ultimate Alliance, but with AAA quality that sort of went into Marvel's Avengers, but sadly the end product just isn't everything that it should have been. But to end the video, I just want to say this. Even though I critique this game to death right today, I want to say I want this game to succeed. I want Avengers to be great. So let's hear it in the comments. Are you concerned about Avengers? Or are you loving it to death right now? Please be sure to comment, like, and subscribe.